Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. Today is our Wednesday show, which is a longer show that we do every Wednesday. I'm Craig Mason, one of the founders of Business Legal Lifecycle, and as always, I have with me Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good day.
Excellent. So today we're talking about Phase 11. So, Jeremy, do you want to go into a bit more detail about what Phase 11 of the Business Legal Lifecycle is?
Yeah, sure. So Phase 11 of the Business Legal Lifecycle is the sale of whole or part of the business or listing on the stock exchange. So today, because it's the first Wednesday of the month, so this has been aired on the Wednesday the 7th of March 2018, we are going to do our usual education topic on Phase 11. And in that, we're going to talk just today about the sale of whole or part of the business. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the actual Business Legal Lifecycle in Phase 11 and what it means. I'm going to talk. Craig's going to talk about the sale of business. I'm going to talk about the process of sale of business. Then Craig's going to talk about the asset sale agreements, and then I'm going to finish up with share sale agreements. As always, we have our workbook and our show notes, which will be at businesslegallifecycle.com.au/069. So please feel free to check that out, download it, and we're always welcome your feedback. So Phase 11 of the Business Legal Lifecycle, if you're unaware of the Business Legal Lifecycle, I've put it up on the slide here. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Periscope, Twitter, if you're listening on the podcast, as always, please feel free to check out our webpage, businesslegallifecycle.com.au, has an image of the Business Legal Lifecycle. And if you're interested in seeing what we do with our live shows, then please check out our website, our Facebook page. Sorry, if you go to Facebook and type in Business Legal Lifecycle, then you'll be able to see this show. It'll be posted today, the 7th of March. And you'll see it there. So Phase 11 is, if you have a look at the image, is at the top of the Business Legal Lifecycle. The reason for that is that when you're in business, everyone needs to understand that they will exit their business at some stage. So at some stage, you're going to get out of your business. That's inevitable. There's nothing you can do about that, whether that be by choice, by selling the business, or being forced by something, God forbid, happening to you from a medical point of view, or from a family point of view, or a downturn in the market. All those things can cause you to exit the business. So it's really important to understand that at some point, whilst you're in business now, you will be out of business at some point. And that's really important to understand, because what you need to do is you need to set your business up for sale. All too often, I see business owners who come to us looking to sell their business who have no preparation for the sale, and they've got nothing in place, and they can't sell the business straight away. Or if they have to, because unfortunately we've had people come to us who have been unfortunately sick, or a family member's been sick, or they've been forced to move, they can't sell their business for any sort of money. And that's really sad, because they've put their blood, sweat and tears into building a business, into building a brand, into building something that can be saleable in the future, and they've probably spent lots of time out of their family, away from their loved ones, away from the what they could have been doing, and then they can't sell their business for anything. So the business legal lifecycle, one of the reasons that Craig and I developed it was to help business owners to know what, from a legal point of view, they need to have in place to sell the business. So whilst in this phase 11, we're going to be talking about the process of sale, the different ways that you can sell a business, the different avenues that you can go down, it's really important to understand that all of the 10 phases beforehand, all of them are important to make sure that what you sell in the future is actually the right asset, the best asset, and the one that's going to maximize your return. So that means, that's why we have things like startup, making sure that you get your entity right. And we'll talk about that a bit throughout this process. Initial clients, making sure that you've engaged your clients the right way. Bringing on employees, making sure that your employment agreements are solid, making sure that your processes and employee engagement is spot on, because if you've got employees and your business is thriving, then that's going to be what someone's going to be buying. Protecting intellectual property. At the end of the day, if you're running a professional service business, for instance, most professional services do things the same way. It's merely their intellectual property in how they get work in, their brand, how they keep their existing clients. That is the valuable piece to the puzzle. Then you've got to look at maximizing your business before you look at scaling and growing into the phases 7 through 10. So it's really important to understand that whilst sale of business is an important area, and it's important to get right, and we'll go through some of the processes, as I said before, and we'll go through some of the concepts. But all the rest of the business legal life cycle is more important. Having everything right before you get to this phase will maximize your return. And we've seen it, we often talk about the fact that we've acted for well over 5,500 businesses. We've taken many of those through the sale process. And the ones that are set up correctly are really the ones that maximize their return. And that's what Craig and I are passionate about, is about maximizing the return for business owners for their blood, sweat, and tears. So in this show, it's important to talk about that. It's important to talk about those aspects. Throughout this month, we'll also, in our Fast Fix Mondays, we'll be talking about some pretty important topics like taking cash as fees. I can't tell you how important it is to understand what the ramifications of that are. And it's also important to understand that when you want to sell your business, on average, it's 2 years away from being ready to sell. And that's because most people haven't got all this stuff ready before they actually sell their business. So please, if you are in business and you haven't got any of the other stuff set up properly, please get in contact with us, get in contact with your consultants, and get this stuff right. So enough from me and my soapbox, which I seem to do quite regularly in these shows. But I do think it's important that the listeners and the watchers of this show understand these concepts and why we talk about it, because we're not just talking about it for fun. Whilst we find it interesting, there is actually a reason behind it. So, Craig, do you have anything else to add on that? I should say beforehand, and then kick into the sale of business.
No, I don't think so, Jeremy. That was a great summary of phase 11. Obviously, as you said, it's never too late to go back and try to get some of these things in place. If you are thinking about selling, it's not going to be something you can do overnight. So, talk to your advisors. And it's never too late. So let's kick into the rest of today's show. All right. So as Jeremy said, we're talking about selling the business. So right back in phase 2, if you listen to that or watch that, we were talking about the structure that you might have set up for your business. And there's a legal distinction between a company that owns the business and the actual business. So you can sell just the business, or you can sell the company that owns the business, and that's a share sale rather than a business sale. So there's an important distinction there that you need to, back in phase 2, when you had your structure in place, you were thinking about, and you would have spoken to your accountant and your other advisors about, okay, well, what's the best structure for me now, and what potentially is going to be the best structure for me if I wanted to sell. And you probably had those discussions, hopefully, and you came to a conclusion about whatever structure it was. So we recommend mostly in phase 2 about having a company as a trustee, and that runs the business. So if you have that structure, again, you can still sell the business or sell the shares, and that really depends on what you want to do, what the buyer wants to do, those sorts of things. So something to consider. obviously when we say that a lot in our shows, you're starting with an end in mind. So we set up all these things to hopefully maximise your sale at this phase, if that's what you choose to do. So that's sale of the business. So we'll talk about a few other things now as well about the process and asset sales and the share sale in a bit more detail. So Jeremy, do you want to go through the process of selling the actual business?
Thanks, Craig. And as I said before, we're recording this on the 7th of March. Anyone who lives in Brisbane where we are will know that the temperature's been up and down. And the reason Craig and I both have croaky voices and are coughing is just because we haven't been able to avoid the flu. So please, we apologise for any inconvenience caused by that. But it's going around a bit around here, and it's something we can't avoid. So anyway, the process. So the process of selling the business is really important. And as Craig said before, the process will depend on whether or not you're selling the shares or you're selling the business. Now, it's also important to remember at this phase that you can also change the structure, and you need to talk to the other side, so with the buyer, about what is going to be the best process for them. So I'm going to talk through 11 steps of selling the business. But at the end of the day, what selling the business is about maximising your sale price. Now, the vast majority of businesses will sell for what we call a multiple of EBITDA. So EBITDA, for anyone who doesn't know, is the earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. The simple way of thinking about it is it's the real income that you're going to get out of the business. So not what you get back from your tax deduction, not what you get back from depreciation or amortization. It's the actual earnings, the cash that you get for your business. And the vast majority of businesses will sell for a multiple of that EBITDA over the last couple of years. And we'll talk about a bit more about that when we talk about cash as fees, but that's a really important concept to understand. Some businesses will sell for other reasons. So some businesses will sell, they might have a great client list and that can be utilized by an incoming business. They might have other assets which are valuable. If you're talking about a business that relies upon plant and machinery or other equipment, then you might find that the business sale price includes those kind of things. So you need to really think about maximizing your EBITDA because that's the thing that actually gets the sale price that you deserve for your business. So let me go through the 11 steps. The first one is to collate all the information that you have about your business. Now, if you watched our previous shows when we've talked about phase 2 startup, right back at the beginning, I think it was August 2017, we talked about making sure that you had all your information about your business in one central location. We get that most people don't do that. We understand, you're busy in business, you're too busy working on your business. But if you want to sell your business, you need to have all the information readily available. To give you an example, we recently acted for a gentleman looking to buy a large business, and we went through the due diligence process, and the seller had none of his information ready. And it ended up taking an extra month on the due diligence process just to get the information that we required. So make sure that you have all the information for your business. This can be, its history, its trading history of employees, the history of basically its entire history. Put it all together in a way that someone can look at and get a good view of the business. The second one is the financial information. So the buyer will not just want to look at what agreements you've got in place with suppliers or other people. They'll want to look at what the financial history of the business is. Now, when we talk about taking cash as fees, I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail for Fast Fix Money, but I will talk about it today. If you take cash for fees or for products or for payments, you might save the tax of, say, I think it's 27.5% on your income in Australia as of the recording of this show or podcast. When you sell, as you remember I said before, you sell for a multiple of your EBITDA. So if you haven't disclosed or paid tax on that money, then you could lose 2, 3, 4 times that dollar. So $2, $3, $4 on your eventual sale price. Because number 2, financial information. Buyers want to see the financial history of the company. If you can't say to a buyer, here's my tax return. I took $50,000 income from this year, but really here's $150,000 that I had in profit. It doesn't work like that. Buyers aren't interested in what you say that you've earned. They're interested in what's on your books. So you need to make sure that your financial information is right. And you remember I said before in my little rant about making sure your business is right before you sell, that it takes about 2 years. And the usual reason for that is financial information, because financial information is not ready to be able to be provided to a buyer. And that's because a buyer will want to look at least 2 years worth of financial information. So make sure that your finances and your financial information, so that's your P&L, your balance sheet, even your cash flow forecasts, are up to date, and that you update them regularly so that buyers can see what the history of the trading history is. They'll likely want to look at more than 2 years. If that's the case, that's fine. And if there's aberrations, then you need to be ready to explain what those aberrations are. So if there's a difference in the income from 3 years ago to 2 years ago, and suddenly it's increased massively, you need to be ready to explain what those things are. But understanding that and having that ready is really valuable.
And if I just jump in there as well, if there's a bank involved that's going to be funding the purchase, they're going to want to see the financial information, obviously. And if it's not complete because you're not declaring cash, then you're going to have an issue there as well. The buyer might be able to pay for the business anyway because the bank won't give them the money. So,
and on that point, Craig, as you and I both know, in 2018, the baby boomers are coming up for retirement age. There's going to be a lot of people looking to get out of businesses, and there's going to be a lot of people looking to buy. And there's there's a lot said in the press these days about the fact that in Australia there's a massive divide between the baby boomers and the Generation X and the millennials from an asset and cash point of view. So most people buying businesses are going to need to finance them. And so what your point is very valid is the fact that banks are going to need to be funding businesses, and you're not going to be able to maximize your return because a bank won't like it if they see that kind of thing on your balance sheet. So excellent point. So step 3 is to interview business brokers. Now, like any profession, not all business brokers are created equal. There's some very good ones. There's some ones that may not be the best. You need to interview them and make sure that you find one that you like and that can work for you. Don't be afraid to ask for references. Don't be afraid to talk to multiple ones. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to recommend a business broker to you in this show, but you need to make sure what their process is, who they are, what they do. There are different styles of business broking. There's a traditional style where a business broker will just sell the business based on the list of the businesses and people that they know that they might want to sell. A new one that's coming out that I'm quite excited about is the use of social media. No one would be surprised about me being excited about that, but using social media and search engine optimization to target people that might be interested in buying the business is a really interesting way of selling the business. And I know a couple of brokers who are looking at that. So interview the business broker, find the way that you think will work best to sell your business, listen to their ideas, and then choose the one that is right for you. So that's step number 3. Step number 4 is, after interviewing the business brokers, is to work out what you actually want from the sale of your business. When you're selling any asset, you need to decide what your red lines are, and you need to decide on what price you want, whether or not you're willing to work for any period of time after the sale. So again, as we go through this baby boom sale boom that's starting to happen now, a lot of people in that age bracket might need to work in businesses for some period of time whilst the next generation builds up to that, builds up to now run the business. So you need to work out what your red lines are, because you need to make sure that your business broker understands what your red lines are and that they're not bringing rubbish buyers to you who don't want that. I've got multiple examples of sellers who said that they, didn't tell business brokers what they wanted as far as price goes and what they wanted for working in the business afterwards, and they were entered into negotiations with buyers who just weren't aligned, and it just wasted everyone's time and money. So then after you've done that, you need to talk to the business broker and then actually choose a business broker. So that's step number 5. Choose a business broker and sign an appointment. An appointment in Queensland is a Form 6 under the Property Occupations Act, and that's just like selling a property. Again, don't feel bad if you want to get a lawyer to look over that agreement. Make sure that it's for a period of time. Make sure the commission's right, that you're satisfied with the commission, because that's very important, and all of the other conditions about marketing and all the rest of it. So choose a business broker, sign an agreement. Make sure that you sign an agreement. It's nothing worse than not having an agreement in place, and then you sell the business and there's an argument between broker and client over what the terms of the appointment are. So make sure that you sign an agreement and get your lawyer to have a look at it. Number 6 is marketing the business for sale. So as I mentioned in step 4 above, there are different ways to market your business. So this is where your broker needs to go through their different styles of however they're going to market the business and start getting you people to sell the business to. At this point, you should also potentially have a non-disclosure agreement with your potential buyers, or at least your broker should, because when buyers approach the broker, they're going to be asking for certain information about your business, and most business owners would be in the boat if they don't want to disclose too much confidential information to potential buyers until they actually sign a contract. Most contracts will be subject to a due diligence period, and if you've ever watched any of our last shows in February when we were talking about buying property, we talked about due diligence, and due diligence is basically where a buyer goes through something with whether it's a business or a property with a fine-tooth comb. So make sure that you have a look at that and make sure that the broker's on top of all that kind of disclosure and restrictions. So step 7 might seem obvious, but it's consider offers. There's nothing wrong with waiting for multiple offers. I often tell my clients not to take the first offer that comes unless it's what they want. Before we talked about back in step 4, what do you want from the sale? If you've got a buyer who's willing to give you the price you want and the lifestyle that you want, then make sure and you're happy with that, then you can accept it. But don't compromise on what you want just on the first offer that comes through the door, because in my experience, there's always multiple offers coming, and often you can use that to negotiate with other offers. So that's step 8, is negotiating and accepting the offer. Most of the time with a business sale, you're not going to just be accepting the first offer that comes through the door or the offer that's made. You might want to go back and negotiate terms. You might want to negotiate price. You might want to negotiate the time that you've got to be in the business. It's really important at this point that if you've got a broker and a lawyer, that you choose one person to negotiate with the other person. All too often I see where you've got brokers and you've got solicitors or even accountants, and everyone wants to help you get the best result. And so they start to provide information, they start to negotiate. Don't let that happen. Choose one point of contact. I don't care whether it's the lawyer, the broker, the accountant, or even yourself. One point. Don't have multiple voices. I've seen far too often sales fall over where well-intentioned parties have tried to provide information that wasn't ready and provided conflicting information, and that causes problems with the buyer and causes problems with the transaction. So just make sure that you have one port of call in the negotiations and once the offer is accepted. Step 9 is the actual transaction. Again, that might seem obvious, but this is actually going through the contract. As I said before, there'll be a due diligence period in most business sale contracts. So you want to go through that. Often, as we alluded to before, as we spoke about before, finance is very important. Most people aren't going to have the cash to buy the business, so there'll be some sort of finance clause. There might be some vendor finance. You need to be really careful on that. That's a topic for another show. There'll be transfer of contracts. So if you've got suppliers or clients, depending on whether or not you sell the business or the company, you might have to transfer those contracts. If there are leases, you might need to transfer those leases. So there's all these steps that need to happen and you need to make sure that you're on top of. What we do, just to give you an idea, is we sit down with our clients and we work out what are all the things that have to be done in the business sale, write down a big list, and then we assign tasks to the lawyer, to the accountant, to the business owner, to financial planners, to the mortgage brokers, work out what needs to be done, and then work out who's going to do what, so that there's no misunderstanding. Because at the end of the day, these are complicated transactions, and I've done a lot of them over the years, and I know what I would normally do, but a buyer might have a seller or an accountant might have different ideas, so you need to get clarity on what those things are. Step 10 is settlement. So this is usually the easiest part, and people often go, why am I paying all this money for lawyers and accountants for the settlement? All the work's done before settlement, and this is where you actually settle the transaction. And so there are many, in a business sale, unlike a property sale, there's many moving parts. It usually takes a couple of minutes. Checks are handed over for paperwork, but that's the settlement, and then you become the owner of the business or the shares in the company. And then step 11 and final step is after settlement. So once settlement's been completed, there'll often be a period of time, as I said before, where you might work through. We'll talk about this more in phase 12 of retirement when we get to that. But yes, after settlement, there might be a period, there might be a retention period. So one of the things we do a lot of is sale and rent rolls. So rent rolls are real estate agents, the list of the properties that they have, that they manage. They might sell those properties to another real estate agent to manage. On that process, often through no fault of either party, property owners might drop off and there'll be a retention period. So depending on the type of business, there might be a retention period that needs to be handled. And that all happens after settlement. So I think that's probably enough on the process. Craig, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I don't think so. As yeah, the process it's involved, but if you have the right people, the advisors, and we talk about that a lot, as having a good team, then everyone's communicating together, then usually the process goes pretty smoothly, and yeah, you get to sell your business and count your money.
Can't sit on the beach in Tahiti.
Yeah, hopefully. All right, cool. So that's the process. The next slide that's coming up now is asset sale agreement. So that's where you might be operating a business that is using assets. So the picture there is probably the main one that is in this, and you've got your plant and equipment, your machinery, whatever that is, a backhoe or something. I'm not sure, an excavator or something. So
it's the only one I can find.
Yeah, your yellow goods, except that one's actually orange. But anyway, yeah. So you get my point. So it's when you're selling a sort of asset that's like that. So there's going to be an agreement in place, and the biggest one from a purchaser's point of view, and the seller for that matter, to make sure it gets all done before you sell it, is the register, the PPSR register, and any encumbrances on that particular asset. They all need to be released, obviously, because the buyer isn't going to want to receive a backhoe or whatever it might be with an encumbrance still registered over there. So you need to coordinate all those sorts of things, and that's where you need to talk to your advisors about that. There's going to be an asset sale agreement. As part of that, there's going to be certain releases and those sorts of things built into that. So that's part of the process. What else have we got in here? There's, it could be due diligence and finance as well with an asset sale agreement. Obviously the bank's going to be, or some other finance is going to be funding the purchase potentially, and they might want to look into due diligence, look at the history of the particular equipment, those sorts of things, service history, etc., to make sure that it's it stacks up and the value's there. So that would be part of the due diligence. Then there's the actual sale of the asset, and sort of follows the process that Jeremy was talking about before, but probably not in as much detail. And then at settlement, obviously, there's some money, and then there's some transfer of ownership documents if it's registered and those sorts of things, depending on the asset. Depending on as well how the actual finance has been structured, you mightn't be receiving, say, the full 100% at settlement. You might be getting 50% or some other arrangement, and then you might have your own security interest registered over that piece of equipment that you're selling. If you're doing that, then it's a great idea to incorporate into the asset sale agreement some form of personal guarantee against an individual. So we've spoken about it previously about setting up all these wonderful structures, and the whole point, or one of the points of setting up these structures, is to protect you personally by having different entities that are running businesses or entering into contracts. So same applies here. You might want to get a personal guarantee from an individual because it's more likely that individual has a house or some other asset that you might be able to attack. Of course, if you've got the asset sale agreement and you've got your registered interest on, and you're selling it in part payments or vendor finance or whatever it might be, then you've also got that method of attack as well at the actual asset and try to get that back. But if there's a shortfall there, then you can go after the guarantor. So yeah, there's a bit to an asset sale agreement. It might seem pretty straightforward. All you're doing is just selling an asset, but you need to think about these sorts of things and analyze the risk and make sure you're protecting yourself, because the last thing you want to do is transfer an asset and then there's something down the track and you don't get all your money, or there's issues. So yeah, asset sale agreement, again, talk to your advisors, make sure you've got the right type of agreement in place with all the protections for you, and the protections for the buyer as well, because they're going to want some protection as well. So all agreements, it's the relationship between the parties, so it's not all going to be one-sided, and so the buyer's going to be asking for certain things as well, which is fine, but just recognise that it's not all one-sided. So asset sale agreement. Jeremy, next one we want to talk about is the share sale agreement.
Share sale agreement. Yeah, thanks, Frank. So share sale agreement is this is where we talked about selling the shares in the company, and you might do that for tax reasons that we've talked about before. As a seller, you might own your shares in a trust, and you might be able to get your capital gains tax exemptions better if you do that process. So a share sale agreement is the agreement that gives rise to the share sale. It's usually quite a complicated agreement because, as we've alluded to before, when you buy the shares in the company, you're buying the company itself, which means that you're buying all of the risk of the company and what the company's previously done, its previous employees, and everything that goes with it. So you need to be really careful and make sure what's actually drafted actually protects you as a seller and also any buyer to make sure that the terms are correct. And that actually protect you. So your common clauses that go into a share sale agreement are things like restraints of trade. The seller will usually be restrained from actually being able to operate a similar business somewhere else. Finance and due diligence. Once again, we talked about those in the process. But a buyer will normally need finance and want due diligence. And due diligence takes a much greater sense of urgency with a share sale agreement because of the risks that you're taking. So, with a due diligence, we'll often sit down with an accountant and other consultants and go through every aspect of the business that we possibly can. And normally for finance approval these days, a bank will want to see that due diligence report to make sure that what you're getting is right and to make sure there's no unanticipated skeletons in the closet. And the classic one is unpaid wages. So there's an employee that left the business 2 years earlier, they weren't being paid properly or they didn't get paid out their entitlements, and the employee comes after the employer for that money. That's the classic example that we're talking about there that you want to check out. Warranties are very important. So if you're buying a company with all these skeletons in the closet, you'll want warranties as to what the position of the company is. You want a warranty from the seller that things like that there aren't past employee claims. Now, at the end of the day, a warranty is only as good as the money that's behind the person who actually gives a warranty. Because if they refuse to pay them, as lawyers, we've got to sue them. And anyone who's been through that process will know that it can be quite difficult if people try and hide their assets. So make sure that you talk to your advisors. There's many ways to be right with warranties and the protections that they give. And making sure that they're right. The other main one I should say is tax, making sure that tax is paid. All too often people may not pay tax, and if you buy the company because you're buying the shares and you're taking over the company and there's previous tax from 3 years ago, then you can be liable for that. So that's the share sale agreement. As I talked about before, you could also have a retention in a share sale agreement, and that can be important if you're worried that the business has certain assets or certain liabilities that might or customers that might leave. So make sure you have a think about those. So that's the share sale agreement. Craig, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I don't think so. Other than actually, I do. Is just with the debts as well. So if there's any debts that have been unpaid and there's a share sale agreement, I've seen a number of times where we might be suing a company and the director says, "Oh well, I just bought it. That's debt. That's not my problem." Well, actually, it probably is, and something that you need to sort out with the previous owner rather than with the client that I was acting for. So make sure you look into all those sorts of things as well to make sure that in the end you can probably pursue the outgoing shareholder depending on what's in your share sale agreement, but you might have to pay the debt and then pursue them afterwards, I guess would be the idea there.
And also, it comes back to if the seller has spent the money or got rid of it, then you may not have anything to actually pursue. So, yeah.
So definitely something you need to look at pretty carefully when you're doing a share sale agreement. And when you're selling, you've got to make sure that you're transparent and give out all the information, because you don't want to be seen to be hiding stuff. Because then you'll have a disgruntled buyer. All right, excellent. So that's Wednesday's show on March for sale of a business. As always, thanks for watching or listening or whatever it is that you're doing through the podcast or through YouTube or wherever else, Facebook. So remember to like the Facebook page or wherever else you might be seeing this or listening to this. The show notes will be up on businesslegallifecycle.com.au/069. So go to there and have a look at the show notes and see if there's anything in there that you've missed or have some questions about. And if you do have questions, as always, please ask them to us via the various platforms. We'll be happy to help out. So that's Wednesday's show. We'll be back again on Monday for Fast Fix Monday, where I believe we're talking about, or more about selling a business, specifically about taking cash as fees, which Jeremy's mentioned already today. So we look forward to seeing you again on Monday. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.